Hello and welcome back to another lecture. In this lecture, we are going to use CloudFormation to create an application load balancer for our project. Let's open our text editor to start. Once you have opened your text editor, open Google as well. The first thing I'm going to do is save my template. I'm going to select File and I'm going to select Save. I'll save my template as alb.yaml and I'm going to select Save. The next thing we are going to do is copy our sections into our CloudFormation template. To do that, let's go to the CloudFormation documentation. I'm going to search for CloudFormation documentation. And I'm going to select the AWS CloudFormation documentation. I'll select user guide. And I'm going to just open this and select working with templates. Then we are going to select template anatomy. Then under template anatomy, we are going to scroll down to the YAML format. We are going to copy these sections and come back to our CloudFormation template and paste it in there. Once you have pasted your CloudFormation sections, we are going to remove the sections we don't need. For this lecture, we don't need the transform, conditions, mappings, and rule. I'm going to delete them. Next, I'm going to clean up my template by deleting the extra information. I'll start up here. The first section we are going to enter is our template format version. And in your CloudFormation documentation, if you scroll down and you select format version and scroll down to the YAML, it is right here. You can copy it. And in your CloudFormation template, just paste it in there. The next section we are going to enter is our template description. And we can enter this template creates an application load balancer. We are going to skip the metadata section for now and create our perimeters first. Just like we did in the other lecture, I have created a reference template for you for the perimeters. And in this reference template that I call application load balancer perimeters, I have included the two perimeters we need to create our application load balancer. So I'm going to copy them. And I'm going to come to the perimeter section, press enter and come all the way to the beginning and paste those two perimeters in there. Once you paste those two perimeters, we are going to fill the value from top to bottom. And if you want to read more about perimeters, in your CloudFormation documentation, I'm going to press back and select perimeters down here. And in here, you can read more about perimeters. For the two perimeters we need for this project, the first perimeter we are going to create is the ACM certificate. And we are going to use this perimeter to import the ARN of our certificate in AWS Certificate Manager. Remember we said in the last lecture, this is the logical name for this perimeter. And this is a name I made up. The description and type comes from the properties. So if I scroll down, under properties, you will find all the properties you can use to create your perimeter. So for this perimeter, we are only using the description property and the type property. For the description property, I'm going to enter the ARN of the AWS Certificate Manager's certificate. And for type, it is going to be a string. We are going to use the next perimeter to import our VPC stack. So just like we did in the last lecture, for the description, we are going to enter the name of the VPC stack that exports value. And for the type, it is going to be a string. Once you are done creating your perimeter, we can now create our metadata section. In our metadata section, we are going to use the label to group our perimeters. I have created a reference template for you as well. Download this reference metadata template from the description. Then copy the information. I'll copy all the information. And I'm going to come to my CloudFormation template, press enter, come to the beginning and paste it in there. Just like we did in the last lecture, we have created two labels. For the first label, we call it certificate ARN, and we have placed our ACM certificate perimeter in that label. For the second label, we call it export VPC stack name, and we have placed our export VPC stack name perimeter in that label. And this is all we need to do for the metadata section. If you want to read more about metadata, come to the CloudFormation documentation. I'm going to press back, and down here you can select metadata and you can read more about it in here. The next section we are going to create is our resource section. Download the reference template that I've created for the resource in the description. Once you have opened the reference template, I'm going to copy all this resource. I'll copy everything, but make sure you don't copy the resources. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come to my resource section in my template, press enter, and press backspace to the beginning and paste my resource in there. I'm going to minimize this. And now we can enter the values for our resources. To learn more about CloudFormation resources, come to the documentation, and I'm going to minimize this and select template reference. And we are going to select resource and properties reference. And in here, you'll find the resources and their properties type. So for our application load balancer, I'm going to scroll down to E for Elastic Load Balancer. And this is in alphabetical order. I'm going to select Elastic Load Balancing V2. The first resource we are going to create is our application load balancer. And you can see the resource type here. I'm going to select it. And if I scroll to YAML, under the YAML format, you will see the resource type and the properties we need to create our application load balancer. Remember, we said in the last lecture, you don't have to use all the properties. So for this lecture, I've selected few properties that we need to create our application load balancer. The first property is the name, and this is the name we want to give our application load balancer. I'm going to name it my application load balancer. The next property we are going to enter is our security groups. Remember, we created our security group in our VPC stack. So we are going to use the import value intrinsic function to import our application load balancer security group into this template. To do that, you are going to enter it like this. I'll press enter, and I'll enter it like this. And this is how you enter the value to import your application load balancer security group. Remember, we are using the import value intrinsic function, and we are using the sub intrinsic function to sub in the name of our VPC stack. And the name that we use to export our application load balancer security group is this name. Next, we are going to enter our subnets. Our subnet is also in our VPC stack. So we are going to use the import value intrinsic function to import in our subnets. Our application load balancer always have to be in the public subnet. So we are going to import our public subnet 1 and public subnet 2 into this template. And you will enter it like this. I'll press enter. And this is how you import your value in from your VPC stack. Remember, we are using the import value intrinsic function. Then we use the sub intrinsic function to change this value for our VPC stack name. And the name we use to export our subnets is public subnet 1 and public subnet 2. The next resource we are going to create is our HTTP listener on port 80. In the CloudFormation documentation, if I go back, and I'm going to select load balancing listener, and I'll scroll down to YAML. Under the YAML format, you'll find the resource type and the properties we need to create this resource. The first property we are going to create is the default action, and we are going to use the default action to redirect our traffic from HTTP to HTTPS. This is what it looks like, and I'll fill in the value for you. Under type, enter redirect. The next property we are going to enter is our load balancer ARN. So we are going to use the ref function to reference our application load balancer up here. For port, we are going to enter 80. And for the protocol, we are going to enter HTTP. If you don't understand any of this, make sure you watch the lecture I created on how to create an application load balancer in the management console. So everything we did in that lecture is exactly what we are doing in our CloudFormation template. You can also read more about it in the CloudFormation documentation, and it will be clear. The next resource we are going to create is our listener on port 443. The first property we are going to enter is our certificate in the AWS Certificate Manager. I'm going to use the ref function to reference the perimeter that I created for it up here. So under our perimeter, we've already created a perimeter for it, and we call it ACM certificate. I'm going to use the ref function to reference it down here. The next property we are going to enter is the default actions. And for type, we are going to enter forward. And under target group ARN, we are going to reference our target group down here. So I'll use the ref function. For the application load balancer ARN, we are going to use the ref function to reference our application load balancer. And for port, we are going to enter 443. And for protocol, we are going to enter HTTPS. The next resource we are going to create is our target group. You can find this resource in the CloudFormation documentation. I'm going to go back, and you can find it here, load balancing target group. And if you scroll to YAML, you have the resource type and all the properties. The first property we are going to enter in our template is the health check interval seconds. And in there, we are going to enter 10. The next property is going to be the path. And for the path, we are just going to enter /. The next property is going to be health check timeout seconds. And for that, we are going to enter 5. The next property is going to be healthy threshold count. And we are going to enter 2. If you want to read more about this property and their value, you can select it here, and you can read more about it here. For the matcher property, this is going to be the success codes. So under HTTP code, I'm going to enter 200 and 302. The next property we are going to enter is the name of our target group. I'm going to call it my web servers. And for the port, it is going to be 80. And the protocol is going to be HTTP. For an unhealthy threshold count, it is going to be 5. And for the last property, which is our VPC ID, we are going to import the value from our VPC stack. And we are going to enter it like this. I'll press enter. This is how you enter it. We are using the import value intrinsic function, and we are using the sub to substitute this value for our VPC stack name. And the name we use to export this value in our VPC template is VPC. The last section we are going to create in our application load balancer template is the output sections. Open the reference template for the output. For our application load balancer, we are going to export these values. The first value is our target group. The second value is our application load balancer DNS name. And the third value is the zone ID of our application load balancer. I'm going to select all these values and copy them. And I'm going to come into my CloudFormation template, press enter, and come all the way to the beginning and paste it in there. Then I'm going to minimize this. The first value we want to export is our target group. So for the description, I'm going to enter web server target group. And for the export name, remember we covered it in the VPC lecture. You will enter it like this. And this is how you enter it. We are going to substitute this value for our stack name, and we are going to join it to this. For value, we are going to reference our target group resource. The next value we are going to export is our application load balancer DNS name. For description, I'm going to enter application load balancer DNS name. And for the export name, I'm just going to copy this. I'll copy it and paste it down here. And I'm going to change this export value to the logical name I gave it. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here. For value, we are going to use the get attribute intrinsic function. And this is how you enter it. This is how you enter the value. Remember, we are using the get attribute intrinsic function to get the DNS name of this application load balancer resource. So that's what this means. The next value we are going to export is our application load balancer zone ID. So for the description, I'm going to enter something like this. For the export name, I'm going to do the same as this. I'll copy this and paste it under the name. Then I'm going to change this to my logical name. Copy my logical name and paste it here. And for value, again, we are going to use the get attribute to get the hosted zone ID of our application load balancer resource. So you will enter it like this. And we are done creating our application load balancer template. The next thing I'm going to do is save my template. I'll select File and select Save. Then I'm going to go to the CloudFormation console and I'll maximize. In my CloudFormation console, I have created my VPC stack, my NAT gateway stack, and the RDS stack. Make sure you create your stack first. Then come to Create Stack. I'm going to select with New Resources. And I'm going to choose Upload a Template File. And I'm going to choose a file. And I will select my application load balancer template and select Open. Then I'll select Next. For stack name, we are going to enter ALB. And that stands for Application Load Balancer. Under parameters, the first parameter is we need to enter the ARN of our certificate in here. So I'm going to right click to open a new tab. And I'm going to select Services. Then I'm going to come down to Security, Identity, and Compliance and select Certificate Manager. For this project, this is my certificate. I'm going to click that drop down arrow and I'm going to copy the ARN over here. Then I'm going to go back to my CloudFormation stack, going to paste it in there. For the export VPC stack name perimeter, I'm going to enter the name of my VPC stack. Call it VPC. Then I'm going to click next. Now scroll down, click next, scroll down again, and click create stack. And it is now creating my application load balancer stack. I'm going to select refresh. And I'll give it some time to finish creating the resources in my template. I'm going to pause the video and wait for the create to be complete. CloudFormation has successfully created my application load balancer stack, and you can see the results under the events. If I select output, you are going to see the values we export out of this template. The next thing I'm going to do is open a new tab and go to the management console. In the management console, I'm going to select services and I'll select EC2 under compute. In the EC2 dashboard, scroll down and select load balancer. And you can see we have one load balancer there and it is called my application load balancer. And this is the name I gave to my application load balancer in my template. Next, I'm going to select the listener tab. On the listener tab, you can see we have the two listeners we configured in our template. The first one is HTTP on port 80 and the second listener is HTTPS on port 443. You can also see that the HTTP listener is redirecting traffic to HTTPS on port 443, and you can also see that the HTTPS listener has a certificate we uploaded under it. So everything looks good. The next thing we are going to do is select target groups. I'll select target groups. And you can see that we have one target group in there on port 80. I'm going to select it. Under the health check settings, you can see the values we entered in our CloudFormation template. You can also see that this target group is in this VPC. And when I select it, it should be our test VPC. And yes, it is the test VPC. I'm going to close this and everything looks good in here. I'm going to close it and I'm going to close my certificate manager as well and go back to your CloudFormation stack. This is how you use CloudFormation to create an application load balancer. The next thing we are going to do is delete our stack because they cost money. So the first stack I'm going to delete is the application load balancer stack. I'm going to select it and select delete. And I'll select delete stack. And once the application load balancer stack has been deleted, just like you did in the last lecture, you are going to delete the RDS stack. And once the RDS stack has been deleted, you are going to delete the NAT gateway stack. And once the NAT gateway has been deleted, you are going to delete the VPC. This is how you create an application load balancer using CloudFormation. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.